Oregon State in the national spotlight this week as the Beavers take on a ranked team and a top 10 team for the first time this season. We're getting you ready tonight on hashtag Beavers Football. Thank you so much for joining us. I'm Katie Brown along with Slade Norris, and Tim Yu is here at in Blitzlad in Southeast Portland. So come join us, text us, tweet us. These guys are ready to go to answer your questions tonight. Huge game against Stanford. We have been looking forward to this part of the schedule and moving into it all year long. And the Beavers at 6-1, Tim. You have a red shirt on, but that's not for Stanford. What does that stand for tonight?
Monday Night Foosball, Katie. And really, we're talking football. And what we're looking at is all the guys in this game this week that have the potential of playing on Monday Night Football next year.
Yes, especially Stanford's defensive line, which we will be talking about, as Sean Mannion going to face his biggest test yet to date, as he is still getting more and more attention in that Heisman race. Slade, taking a look at Stanford. This is big time.
It definitely is. This is a huge game for us. If we can get over this hump here, we can really show the nation that we're for real. Get us up in those rankings and get us ready for a showdown at the end of the season with Oregon.
All right, on the opening drive, we're going to be talking about how Oregon State is slowly but surely getting attention in the BCS standings, down at the bottom, but they're in there, and if they can win this game, hopefully be ranked. Steve Priest will be up later in the show to give us an in-depth look at how Brandin Cooks always seems to be in the right place to make it all happen. And then, of course, we'll be talking plenty about Stanford as this poses the first real threat challenge. They've all been big games, but this time Oregon State is an underdog at home heading into this one. That's how big this one is.
Katie, it's the meat and potatoes of the schedule, as I've always called it. And they started out the week, I think, at 6.5-point underdog. And not that I follow the spreads, but I do. You know, that people put money on the Beavers and it went down to 3.5. It's hovering right around 4 right now. So people have belief in the Beavers. And how can you not? After Sean Mannion coming off 481 yards, 4 touchdowns, as I call it, the 4x4 for you in-and-out fans out there. You know, how can you not put your money on the Beavers this week at home?
I love that we're playing at home. Our defense is going to have a tough job. They're going to run the ball all night long on us. They're going to try at least. And defense really gets fueled by emotion, and I really hope that home crowd helps our team out there.
All right, well, we are going to get right to it as we have a tweet that came in from Megan Harper. And again, we want your texts and tweets and emails because you drive the show. You tell us what we're going to talk about. This is your pep rally show. And Megan says, you guys, the competition steps up this week. Is the team doing anything different to prepare? They always say we take it one game at a time. It drives me crazy when they say that because they have to know that they're heading into new territory here.
Classic coach speak right there. One game at a time. But that is the mentality, and that is the truth. They're looking at Stanford and only Stanford. This is the only week they've looked at them. It's the only week they're going to look at them. And they're focusing on it, and they're going to be ready to play this one. Have they done anything different? I don't believe so. They're following the same method and same madness that has brought them to where they're at so far this year.
I definitely agree. Each game is sort of a mini season in itself for the whole week. You can't overlook opponent. I mean, take Stanford, for example. They went to Utah and they got beat there because they let themselves kind of get down and lax and felt confident. You can't do that in such a strong league where the Pac-12 is this year.
That is a great point, that it is a mini season because you go through your Monday prep, your Tuesday prep, and it's short yardage and goal line and third down, and you know what's coming every day in that game prep, and then it all culminates on the big day Saturday, and it all comes together. You don't actually practice, Katie, the same stuff every day, contrary to maybe popular belief.
Well, when you take a look at Stanford, of course, that one loss that you talked about at Utah. In fact, Stanford is the highest-ranked one-loss team, both in the AP and in the first BCS standings. So they got their lesson, kind of like Oregon State got its wake-up call in the first week of the season. Stanford got its wake-up call a few weeks ago.
The thing I'm excited for is that it wasn't the game prior to us. UCLA had to see them after that loss at Utah. So I think that just puts us another rung up on the ladder is an advantage in the preparation game. They're not coming off a salty loss, and they're not coming to Corvallis salty. So I think that's a good thing that it wasn't last week, it was 2 weeks ago.
And I definitely think they fear this Oregon State team. They know that we are a hard team to play at home. Historically, and this season, nobody wants to come up here. I mean, take USC, for example, in the past. They know it's a hard place to play, and David Shaw seems to come up with a good plan. Their defense, they have a good defense, but I definitely think that we can put points on them. They aren't that iron curtain they've been in the past.
And last year, Oregon State came so close to winning at Stanford. In fact, Storm Woods had said he still feels like they should have won that game, as he was on CSNNW online. That video you can see. Does that still stick with the players a year later, thinking about the last time they faced this team?
I'll guarantee it does. I was actually talking with Mitch Musin today, who was coaching on that staff, and he goes, man, we should have won that game last year. And it came down to just a few small mistakes at the end, and it cost them greatly. And it cost them not just in that game, but in the whole scheme of the Pac-12 North. So I think guys have definitely had this one on their calendar marked off.
Not only just the past week or the past season. I remember a game in 4th grade that we lost. It was the only game of the entire season we lost, and it still gets me upset. We were playing a team from Canby, and still to this day when I drive through Canby, I don't like the city.
Holding some grudges.
All because of that 4th grade game. So they definitely remember the game from last year.
And just to tell how long ago that was, today is your birthday, Slade.
It is my birthday.
A happy birthday.
Big 2-8 today.
The big 2-8.
It's a good thing for Oregon State, because back when I was playing, we only lost one game during the week of my birthday each year. And one of the games was when I turned 21. We played USC, and we beat them that weekend.
I think we always had a bye the week of my birthday, so I was 100%.
All right, let's go back to social media. Send in your texts and tweets, or your happy birthday to Slade, celebrating with us on this Friday night. Gary Kloss writes in, do you feel like this could make or break the season? Win equals Rose Bowl, lose equals Sun Bowl. Win or break, make or break for both teams, he asks.
Talk about the jump to conclusions, Matt, Katie. I'm kind of off of space, old school.
Still a lot of football to be played.
There is so much football to be played still. And to say that because we win, we'll go to the Rose Bowl, you're talking so many variables still. It's just about winning this game and getting another win in that column, increasing your wins in the Pac-12 North, and increasing your probability of having a chance to go to the Rose Bowl. I don't say it makes or breaks it, but you still have a lot of good football teams ahead after this week.
You can never say one game will dictate a whole season. I mean, everybody said after Eastern Washington, oh, their season's over. They counted us out. We're not going to a bowl game. We're not doing anything. And look where we are now. We're sitting 6-1, and we're in a great position in the Pac-12.
And you know it's so exciting. Not only 6-1, but the Beavers just look like a much better football team. As some teams have dropped off, Oregon State each week has gotten better and better as the season has gone along. All right, well, we are just getting started on hashtag Beavers Football. A ton to talk about: the offense, the defense, Stanford. What threat do the Cardinals pose? Coming up at Breezer Stadium tomorrow. Send in your texts and tweets, and we'll be back to answer them on hashtag Beavers Football. We are live at Blitzlat in Southeast Portland, getting ready for the Beavers' big national TV game against Stanford tomorrow night. Oregon State, of course, hunkered down or on their way to the team hotel now to get settled in for the night. And as we move into first down in this segment, this is all about your questions coming in, texts and tweets, so send them in. We are in the meat of the schedule. They all matter, but now it really matters now that the Beavers have arrived at this point, 6-1. So we're going to get right to it, as we have an email that came in from Elton in Harrisburg, who asks, it seems like the receivers rush for more yards than the backs, and the backs have more yards receiving than the receivers. Should they switch positions?
It does seem that way sometimes, Katie, when you're talking about guys like Brandin Cooks and Victor Bolden running the fly sweep around the horn and getting some of those rush yards upfield. I think they have been actually the leading rushers in a couple of the games this year, for sure. I know Brandon has.
And the screen passes, those little screens.
Passes, the check downs to Storm and to Ward. I can't say they should switch positions, because their running back has a unique set of skills and wide receiver has a unique set of skills. And it is interesting to see how the Beavers have got their rush yards and their receiving yards this year. But I wouldn't see it. What's the toughest thing about tackling a running back, Slade?
Well, I mean, most of them, especially the Oregon State back when I was there, was Quiz and Ev. Those guys are so dang low to the ground. You try to get low on them, and they're already at your thigh pad. So Oregon State's always had a great stable of running backs. But as far as running back in particular, they're shifty. They're hard to run, and receivers, they're a lot easier to take down there. So they couldn't. Most of them can't translate and go beyond.
When they get around the horn and they're in space, they can make some moves. But running between the tackles, a receiver would never really stand a chance.
No.
Now, when we're looking at Stanford with that front seven that they have on defense, it's tough. And so when we're looking at the things that Oregon State likes to do, the little screen passes, the fly sweeps, what should we be looking for tomorrow? Does this make it more difficult to do those types of plays that Oregon State likes?
You know, that's a good question, Katie. And when you look at the game tape, I mean, it's crazy when you break it down. Stanford plays so true to their 3-4 and then their 4-2 nickel package. 96 snaps against Washington, 4 blitzes. And I consider a blitz when they bring a strong safety or a corner, a free safety, more than just a 4-man rush. 4 out of 96. Against UCLA, they blitzed twice. Against Utah, they blitzed twice. And you're talking 70, 80 plays. They like to play it straight up and just say, we're better than you. And those front seven are pretty stinking good.
They're confident with their D-line. They know they can get a pass rush without having to send somebody. So what I think they're going to do, they're going to play 2 safeties back. They're like, Brandin Cooks can't beat them deep, and they know that. They're going to try to get up on our line. They're going to press our receivers, mess up the timing on our routes, and try to get Sean to hold that ball to make sure those guys get to him.
I've always said the Stanford defense looks like a Steelers defense from the early 2000s, mid-2000s, where you look like a guy like Vrabel for the Patriots, and he was a Steeler early on. The way they use their hands and get both hands up into a guy's slade, they get that hip extension. They just play really, really well, play really smart, and that's what's so tough about them, Katie. They're so technical, and then you got some big guys inside. You got a big nose tackle. You got guys like Gardner. You got Murphy on the outside with 7 sacks. Those guys are tough to account for, and they don't have to bring a blitz when you got a guy that has 7 sacks. He can get it done on his own. So will the screen, I think initially you talked about the screen game. That will play a part, but not as maybe significantly because they don't bring that constant pressure that we've seen.
You mentioned Murphy. That 7 sacks is leading the Pac-12, so he is the Pac-12 leader in sacks. And it's great with Stanford because the entire team, is an intelligent group. So they're always going to be in that right position. I mean, they're technically sound and mentally sound.
Are you saying we're playing the smart kids tomorrow?
Well, that's why I had to dress up with the collar,
I saw you dressing it up a little bit this week.
Stanford this week.
The smart kids are in Corvallis for the weekend. All right, we go back to the tweets, and this from Fred, who says, should we give one guy the responsibility of keeping Scove off of Mannion?
One guy, the responsibility of keeping Scove off. Man, it's a valid point. But when I look at what they do, they bring those 4 and at most 5-man rushes. And so you should be able to protect with 5 or 6 guys keeping that running back in. I don't think you need to leave one guy on Scove. I mean, how rare is it for a defense, especially in a pass protection, to single up like a running back on a guy like Scove, Slade?
I really have never heard of that. It'd be actually harder for the offense to do that because it'd put them out of place. So I can't see them doing that this week.
It's a lot easier on defense to have a linebacker track a fullback,
much easier,
running back, a quarterback, than to have a running back track an actual linebacker, Katie.
Okay, well, we have a lot of social media coming in, so we'll get to it. We have Doug Max who asked, can you highlight the offensive plays that worked for Utah, or just generally, what did Utah do that got Stanford off of its game so they could get a win?
Offensively, they moved the ball around to different receivers, different running backs. They did a lot of the spread option things, and that's not necessarily what we do well at Oregon State. It's not part of our repertoire, but that's what Utah did to make it successful. Also, they gave up some big plays, and when you have the chance to get big plays against a team like Stanford and move the ball big chunks at a time, that's really going to help out in creating turnovers.
I like that you said big plays. I was looking at the last couple of games we played, and Coach Riley defines an explosive play as over 20 yards. Against Washington State, we had 12, they had 2. Against Cal, we had 9, they had 3. We really need to continue this trend against Stanford. We need to beat them in that category, and the turnover category is extremely important.
Okay, well, we talked about Stanford's defense a lot this segment. When we come back, we'll take a look at the offense of the Cardinal and what the Beavers defense is up against heading into the big matchup tomorrow. That's on #Beavers Football. Football, plus your texts and tweets when we come back. Oregon State with a chance to prove it is for real this season as the Stanford Cardinal come to Reser Stadium tomorrow night, and we're getting you ready with your pep rally show, #Beavers Football. So send your social media in, and we're going to get to as many as we can tonight. We're going to turn now and second down and take a look at the Stanford's game heading into this game. And we have a question coming in from Thomas Schmidt. It says, what will Oregon State have to do to stop the run, the pass, in order to slow Stanford down?
I definitely think we have got to stop the run. We need to put it in their quarterback's hands and make them pass the ball because, I mean, let's be honest, we are a very opportunistic defense. We come up with picks in big times, and I don't think Hogan will be able to win the game for him. I want our linebackers to get up on the line of scrimmage. They're going to bring in big bodies, the 3 tight end sets, the extra tackles, all that kind of stuff. Get up on the line of scrimmage. Don't let those big bodies get ahead of steam before they can get into your body.
Slade, it's old school smash mouth football at its best. They're going to bring 3 tight ends and a fullback in the game. They're going to run option off of it. They're going to run lead, power, G. They're going to smash mouth it. And so it's going to be interesting, Katie, to see our 4 down and how we make that rotation. If we bring guys like Hautau in, if we bring Delva in, bring some of those bigger bodies that maybe haven't seen the reps over the last couple weeks. Bring in some of those linebackers. I wouldn't shock to see the linebackers playing 3 or 4 at a time in the game with those different personnel groups. Almost running a 4-4, Slade, just to stop Gaffney in that run game.
I really wouldn't mind that at all. Just keep guys fresh, keep them rotating in. We did that when I was playing. When I first started, we had Dorian Smith and Jeff Van Orso on our first and second downs. Vic and I had come in on the pass rushing. I like a fresh team. When we have good players backing them up, they can go in there and do a good job. So I like what you said there.
Tyler Gaffney had 171 yards, 2 touchdowns rushing against UCLA last week. Is there any number that Oregon State should be looking to hold him under tomorrow?
I think 100 yards is a standard. If you can hold him under 100 yards, the style of offense they want to play, Katie, that will put the ball in Hogan's hands. And when they put the ball in Hogan's hands, I think it gives us an opportunity to make plays on defense, especially in our secondary. I believe our pass rush would get to him, and we would be able to create some turnovers in the secondary.
Look at these Oregon fans back here. You know what?
Not acceptable.
Unacceptable, right? Beaver fans, come on.
Come on down to Blitz Lab.
At least part of her shirt's black.
Wipe these Oregon fans away. Wipe these Oregon fans away. All right, we're going to go on now to a tweet that came in from Doug Max. We're getting back to the chain song. The chain song was fun, but needs replacing. Is it going to be replaced? I'm sure you don't know the answer to that. I assume the answer is no. So, chain song tomorrow.
I think there was enough marketing put into the chainsaw. It's here to stay for a little while, Katie. So, you know, I had a coach at Buffalo, Mike Miller, and when things weren't going right, we didn't like what was going on. He would just look at the tight ends. We want more balls, coach. We want to catch the rock. And he'd say, your job this week is to block, and our job in this room is to embrace. And we got to embrace the chainsaw, Katie.
Embrace the chainsaw.
It may not be what we all like, but you know what? Just look around.
I'm thinking of the theme for the next T-shirt for you. Embrace the chainsaw.
Look around the stands and just pick out the best chainsaw you see. You don't necessarily have to join in. I know. So I saw a Slade chainsaw the other day, so Slade digs a chainsaw.
What I love is Dylan Wynn running out with the chainsaw. I don't know why I couldn't do that when I was playing back in the day.
Okay, we go back now to a tweet. This is from The Natural. The Natural asks, what kind of package does Oregon State use to stop Stanford's triple tight end running package? You talked about it a little bit, but what exactly do they need to do?
You know, The Natural, first off, one of the best movies there ever was, Katie, with Robert Redford. So that's my Wikipedia for the day. Now, to stop Stanford's run game with 3 tight ends.
You know, their 3 tight ends, I'm not nearly as worried about as much this year as I was in the past. Those tight ends aren't the same as the guys they used to have playing there. What I'm more worried about is when they go ahead and they put the offensive tackles in there as those tight ends. We'll get some big bodies in there. Like you said, put Hautau in there. Try moving somebody who weighs that dang much around in the middle. That's going to help us out. But as far as a certain package, I don't see us changing up that much, just kind of changing personnel with them.
You know, UCLA did a great job of stopping that run early on. They just wore them down as the game continued on into the third and late in the fourth quarter.
That game was a grind for a long time.
It was a grind on both sides of the ball, and that's where I think the Beavers actually have that quick strike, quick hit offense. They can score a lot of points. And Stanford, I talked about in my blog this week, Katie, Stanford's offense is not meant to score points. Stanford's offense is meant to just score enough to not lose the game, and the defense has the job to win the game for them.
I really think, too, they're a different team when they're trying to play from behind. I really hope we can get the ball first, go down and get a quick 7 points, and put them in that sort of oh-no stage. They play I think play call is a little bit different when they're playing from behind there.
Play calling definitely changes when you reach that panic mode. When you're down, you got to get back. I know Coach Erickson used to, we wouldn't hardly ever run the ball if we were down by more than a field goal. You know, it's just air it out. And play calling does change. You're right, Slade.
All right, we go back to a tweet. This from Chris Mike, who asked, could this game come down to a turnover or a key special teams play? Feels like we need to play mistake-free football.
Stanford's a great team. I mean, whenever you play a great team in the Pac-12, it's going to come down to mistake-free, no turnover football. So it's really no different from any other game. That's the goal you out there to have. But, you know, Stanford's a great team. And anytime you get a special teams touchdown or a big give up something like that on teams, I mean, that changes the game.
You're taking on number 8 in the BCS. You got to play mistake-free.
No, number 6 in the BCS.
Number 6 in the BCS. We're number 25. So you have to play mistake-free flat out. Now, what does worry me in that special teams game is a guy like Montgomery, who has the ability to take it to the house. It's been so long since Oregon State had a return to the house. I can't remember. It was Jordan Poirier was the last one, I believe. But, you know, we were talking about it on Talking Beavers last week. We need one of those big special teams plays, Katie, to really give us that momentum and that boost of energy. And think about it, Slade. You're on the sideline and one goes to the house, a pick six or a special teams play. Well, how does that energize you as a player?
Oh, I remember James Rogers doing it. I remember Sammy Strotter doing it. Not only does it energize the players, but it energizes the whole stadium. I mean, that stadium blows up and explodes. They love seeing points put up or a blocked punt. It can change the game, like I said. So, as a player, you know, that it's really, as a defense, like I said earlier, it's such an emotional state there that you're in. It really would help out.
It really is different playing defense, too, where that big play is what you thrive on. Offense, Katie, you're just always going to grind it out. Those guys like the big play. All
right, well, when we come back, we'll take a look at the quarterbacks as we talk about Stanford's offense, but we haven't talked about their quarterback much yet. We'll take more of your texts and tweets. Plus, Steve Priest will be up to talk about Brandin Cooks.
We're going to look at 3 plays where the Beavers have used Cook's deception and Mannion's ability to look people off to be successful.
Oregon State on a huge stage tomorrow night at home against number 8 Stanford, number 6 in the BCS, and on national TV at Reser Stadium. Welcome back to Hashtag Beavers Football as we get you ready, coming to you live from Blitz Lad in Southeast Portland. I'm Katie Brown along with Slade Norris and Tim Ewis, and you can just tell from the social media that this is big because we have lots of questions coming in. Keep them coming. We're going to get to as many of them as we can tonight. Going to talk a little bit about here in third down about the quarterbacks and move into Oregon State's offense a little bit. And we'll get started with Greg Geiger, who writes in, how are Sean Mannion and Brandin Cooks not in the middle of the Heisman talk? Now, I will say it's pretty much a quarterback Heisman board right now, and Sean Mannion is slowly but surely working his way in there.
Katie, I got the same question, so I'm right there with Greg. Sean, 3,000 yards, 29 touchdowns. If he goes for the 4x4 tomorrow, and once again, we're all In-N-Out fans. We like the In-N-Out burger. 4 patties, four layers of cheese. You could probably get something just like that here at Blitz Lad.
Translate to 400 yards,
400 yards, 4 touchdowns. Sean goes for the 4x4. Shawnee football is in the Heisman talk come Sunday morning. I'll guarantee it, even though we're on the late game.
We've been talking about this for weeks, but the reality is it's here. If Oregon State goes out tomorrow night on national TV, has a huge game, he has a huge game, they're in the rankings finally in the AP Top 25, and he is in the middle of the Heisman talk. So the stage is set.
He's number 5 in the straw polls. Now, Brandin Cooks is another guy that should have some consideration, Slade.
He definitely should, and you can tell by, like you were saying earlier, the betting lines, it's starting to swing Oregon State's way. Normally, we wouldn't have that. The national attention is getting on this team. So if they can just continue the success, like you said, I really think the press will blow up in Oregon State.
Did you ever look at a betting line as a player?
You know, I'd always try to keep my finger on the pulse of what was going on at Like to cover for the guys.
I don't think I ever once looked at the actual spread because I thought every game was winnable. So if we were a 26-point underdog to USC, I thought it was winnable.
But do you think the Beavers know tonight that they are underdogs in their house tomorrow night?
Guaranteed that's been pointed out to them by somebody. Probably not Coach Riley, but somebody has mentioned to them that they're dogs in their house.
All right, we have an email that has come in from Mike that says, will Stanford key on Cooks so much that the other receivers, such as Mulaney and Cummings, have big games?
I don't think they'll necessarily key. I mean, they'll definitely key on Cooks, but I think they'll key on no deep throws. They don't want anything over the top. They feel, I believe, that if they can keep the ball short, they can tackle our receivers, get that 6-yard gain, make them run the ball, the third and shorts. They think they can win the game that way.
And that's what Stanford's been so good at, is playing that base defense, not giving up the big play, and really tackling guys in space. Their tackling is underrated for what they do. And it just comes back to what I said earlier. The linebackers, the linemen, technically sound. Their secondary is the same way. They don't miss in space, Katie.
And I do. Go ahead.
No, go ahead.
I was going to say, I do feel like that's why they play Oregon so well, because Oregon spaces everything out, and they have such great tacklers on that team. It gives them the advantage in that game.
But if you look at our bread and butter, it's been underneath passing. It hasn't been completing a 50-yard ball downfield. It's been completing a 12 to 15-yarder and letting somebody get some yards after carry.
And let's be honest, they're going to key on Sean Mannion. They're going to rattle him. They're going to try not to give him the time that he needs for Brandin Cooks to get all the way downfield for those big plays. He is going to see, they're going to bring more pressure at him than he's seen yet.
I agree. And now they're going to get a better rush. Like, again, I don't think they'll bring a lot of pressure. They may, though. The thing that's a little tricky about this game, and for both teams, really, it's a pro-style offense versus pro-style offense. And where you look at our last several opponents, the air raid attacks, a little spread option before that against UCLA or Utah, I apologize. You look at their opponents the last few games, Washington, Utah, all the spreads, zone reads, Washington State air raid. This is a true, in my opinion, smash mouth football game of two pro-style offenses just ready to duke it out, Katie.
That's why I'm really excited for our defense, because this is the kind of football I like to watch. Yeah. I like to watch the hard nose, the smash mouth, and we haven't had that yet this year. So I always love when we play a team like Stanford. That's why I always want to go play the teams from the SEC.
How did your mentality change, Slade, when you knew you could just pin the ears back and go for it?
Oh, it's so much more fun. It takes all the hesitation out of the game. You can just go play football, rely on your physical ability, and just go hit somebody. And that's what football's about.
It's a much more physical game.
It definitely is.
Yeah.
All right, we are going to get back to the social media and an email. Slade, what are your parents' names?
My dad's name is Randall Clifford. My mom's name is Sue.
Oh, well, that's great, because this email is from Sue and Randy, who say, who was the standout defensive end from Oregon State past who has a birthday today?
Oh,
thank you.
Trivia question of the night from Slade's parents.
Mom and Dad honored the boy. I like it.
They love him. The biggest fans.
Happy 28th birthday. All right, I said before the break that we were going to talk about Kevin Hogan a little bit, because Stanford has a solid quarterback, but he certainly he's not in the Heisman talk. He has not had a perfect season.
1,400 yards this year, Katie. It's far from perfect, and they don't have that pass game that they traditionally had. They lost Zach Ertz and some of those big, tall wide receivers, tight end / guys to the NFL. They had one guy this year. Now he's hurt, so they just don't have that big play downfield guy to throw the ball to. So they rely on the run game, and then he makes plays with his own feet. I mean, he rarely takes a sack. He usually ends up positive yards on a scramble, if not a first down, Slade.
That's really what scares me. You look at Travis Wilson from Utah and our problems in the past stopping that mobile quarterback. He doesn't, I don't think, like to do that. That's not his first option. He likes to get the ball out, but he can make plays with his feet. So that's just another option that adds to what Stanford's offense does.
And it's not what they're trying to do. They're not trying to get him rushing yards, but it's a byproduct of his athleticism.
It's not like UCLA. I mean, UCLA runs off their quarterback there. I mean, he has to do that for them to win. Hogan isn't the same.
Oh, this is going to be a fun one, isn't it? I love everybody sizing it up. And when you have a point spread that is that small in the Pac-12, 3-4 points, it means it's anybody's ball game once kickoff comes tomorrow night. We still have a lot more to cover. Coming up next, it is Steve Priest and his insight.
Kevin Cummins is the slot man inside. He'll run a quick flatten up and count on Cooks taking with him not only the guy who's covering him, but the linebacker to the inside.
What a season for Brandin Cooks. Of course, he leads the nation in catches, receiving yards, and touchdown catches. But Steve Priest in the Extra Point breaks down for us tonight exactly how Brandin Cooks gets open.
Oregon State's season really starts this week against the Stanford Cardinal, number 8 team in the nation. Oregon State's number 1 pass combination, Sean Mannion to Brandin Cooks, who leads the nation. Sean Mannion in yards per game, in total yards. Cooks in receptions with 76, 170 yards nearly each game, and 12 touchdowns already. Stanford has one of the best front sevens in college football and one of the best teams in the Pac-12 on defense. They have 2 safeties who will both be in the NFL. They set up a game plan that each week takes away the offense's best plays. They effectively say, Oregon State, you won't beat us with Sean Mannion to Brandin Cooks. Find another way. Oregon State's other receivers, Richard Mullaney, Kevin Cummins, the tight ends, the running backs are all going to have to participate. The Beavers have done that in this season. We're going to look at 3 plays where the Beavers have used Cooks' deception and Mannion's ability to look people off to be successful. Here, Cooks, split wide left, 3 tight ends set, and the Beavers send Connor Hamlet, the H-back, in motion across the formation. That's Caleb Smith, the tight end. He's going to wait until the defense leaves him. They won't even cover him. They're too interested in watching Brandin Cooks and also that motion, looking for the play pass faked by Sean Mannion. Now look at Caleb Smith. Nobody's there. It's an easy 6 and something the Beavers have to have this week. A more traditional Oregon State on a 3rd and goal. They've got the double slot they feature, and that's Brandin Cooks, again on the outside. Kevin Cummins is the slot man inside. In this situation, he'll run a quick flatten up and count on Cooks taking with him not only the guy who's covering him, but the linebacker to the inside. So there's an open hole that makes it an easy catch for Kevin Cummins. Then the Beavers will score. To the outside, Cooks brings everybody in, and look at the hole he creates behind it. Excellent catch by Cummins. Easy for the Beavers to put 6 on the board. Back to 3 tight ends, and again, Cooks. The Beavers use him to come inside. He's totally a decoy here. In this case, the tight end and a 3 tight end set is Tyler Perry, number 88, excuse me. He's going to go to the corner after Cooks clears and the halfback clears in the flat. Again, a giant hole created by Brandin Cooks, taking the cornerback, making the linebackers look to him. Now look at this. It's wide open, easy throw, easy catch for Tyler Perry, number 88. If Oregon State gets that kind of play all across the field, not just inside the red zone, they will win this football game. But they have to get catches from other people and take advantage of Stanford's determination to stop Mannion to Cooks. That's my extra point for this week. Beat Stanford. Go Beavs.
Thank you, Steve, for looking at that. And I tell you what, it seems like this season, no matter where Sean Mannion puts it up, no matter how many guys are on Brandin Cooks, he is going to find a way to come down with that ball. It has been unbelievable. All right, we have a email that is in about Mannion and Cooks. This comes from Zach. It says, is keeping starters like Mannion and Cooks on the field during blowouts to pursue statistical records worth the risk of possible injury? Seeing Cooks lay face down on the turf last week for a few long moments was enough to make one second guess the decision to have him in the game at that point.
want to take that one?
Yeah. I want to go for the
Slade,
record.
it's your birthday. We won't make you answer one like that on your birthday.
I like going for the record personally, Katie. It's exciting to have a chance to break Mike Hass's record, and for Sean to go after the records he's going at. And that catch would have put them about 10 yards shy of the record. Sean probably would have continued that drive on for a touchdown. Any receiver that's caught several balls over their career has got the ball to the belly and got the wind knocked out of them, and I've had that a couple times, and you've probably jumped on fumbles and had that happen before. And yeah, it is a little unsettling to see a guy like Brandin Cooks face down on the field and out of breath. There's a fine line there. You notice they didn't come back again. So they kind of gave it one shot for the record, gave it a good alumni toss, and tried to keep some people happy. And at the end of the day, probably better to leave them off at the end of those blowouts.
And at the same time, too, with the way the BCS system is set up, with our schedule, we needed some big victories against these opponents. I mean, you've got to build up your schedule if you're not playing the caliber of teams you'd like to play. So those big wins are really important in the broad spectrum of things.
And if Sean gets that completion, he's over 500 yards again. And talk about Heisman hype. That does nothing but help it. So there's so many details that go into that, and the coaches are just caught up in the moment. They're excited. I mean, you're excited for your guys to go play and perform well, Katie.
Okay, we have a guest. It is not all Duck fans here at Blitz Lad, because we have a Beaver ready to ask a question. What's your name and question?
Hi, my name is Mitchell Hipp. My question is, since OSU's had trouble running the ball up the middle this season, how important and how effective is the fly sweep going to be against Stanford's defense?
Good question, Mitchell. I think it's very important this week, especially considering how good those front seven are. Nobody does a good job of running up the gut between the tackles against Stanford. So to be able to run around the edges, get some of those edges, the fly sweep essentially lets you leave one of the ends unblocked. I used to just laugh when my tight ends would leave Slade unblocked, and Slade would kind of be there in space, and you almost panic, Mitchell, because you're unblocked and you don't know how to react. So I think it could be really good going against a guy like Murphy that kind of plays that stand-up outside linebacker position, or when they go to their nickel 4-2 and Gardner's outside, freeze one of those guys, leave him unblocked, try to get around the horn. From the defensive perspective, how does it affect you, that outside run?
I hated that play as a defensive end because it's so hard. You got some guy flying by you, and you never know. I mean, you got to watch the handoff, and you're always too late to get there. It's a tough play to defend, and it really stretches out the defense, and it tires the defense because you got to chase after the guy all the way to the sidelines. We run it a lot during the game, so hopefully by the end of the fourth quarter, get those guys breathing, and it'll really help us out.
That's the toughest thing for you guys when you do those pursuit drills, and the whole D-line has to run to the football. You guys got to run 40 yards to catch up to the little guy, and you're like, man, what gives here?
And then right back there for the next play, and we run it out right down the throat, or we go for a big pass there.
Yeah.
I mean, yeah, it's a great play.
All right, great question. Thanks so much for being here tonight. We have an email. This comes in from Craig that says, is it the perfect weekend for Katie? Wins by both the Beavers and Bruins in Oregon. A girl can only hope, right? A girl can only hope. Of course, you know my heart is with the Beavers. I would be lying if I told you I was not wearing blue. A little tribute to my Bruins who were in the state tonight, of course. So I don't think they're real hopeful going to Autzen Stadium, but we shall see. I will be in Corvallis, I want you to know. I will be at Reser Stadium in Corvallis to cheer on the Beavers. Okay, when we continue, it is time for the Standard TV and Appliance What to Watch For after the break. And also, Tim and Slade will have their predictions for tomorrow night's big game in Corvallis. What to watch for at Reser Stadium tomorrow night? Oregon State, Stanford. It is that time. We've been looking forward to this one for a while now. So the Beavers, what do they need to watch for? What do we need to watch for in this game?
So here's what I'm looking at, Katie. I'm looking at three players on defense. Scove, number 11, seems to have a big kind of right elbow thing going on. Huge wrap on it. So we want to see how he performs, how we can maybe take advantage of that. Number 93, Murphy. Guy has 7 sacks, leads the Pac-12, as we already said. Watch him. Number 49, Gardner, playing that D-end linebacker position, might be outside, might be a 3 technique. Those 3 players on defense, sometimes you can't read their names, but from the stands you can see all 3 of those numbers. Those are the 3 guys I'm looking at. We need to block them every play. We need to secure those edges, pick up the blitzes when they do want to bring pressure with Scove, And that's what I'm looking for in the game. And that's going to be our key to success, blocking those 3 players.
A big test for the offensive line. And really, as a lot of Pac-12 teams have gone to this spread game, Stanford's a team that, you know, the SEC has won so many national titles and they're up there every year. They've gone to that power and getting they're going at that power attack right up on front to
They have the players to do it, Katie, especially with the O-line. And so they can still get away with that, and they bring the same thing on the defense, that strong Pittsburgh Steeler type defense.
All right, Slade, what's your standard TV plans, what to watch for in this game?
You know, Tim, you're watching their defense. I'm watching our defense, of course. Our defensive tackles and our middle linebacker, they haven't had to have an impact in the last couple of games because it's so pass-oriented. This game is huge for them. We have to stop Stanford's run attack. We have to put the ball in Hogan's hands. If we can do that, if they come out big, cause some havoc in the backfield, fill their holes, play mentally sound, I think we have a great chance in this football game.
So when you say fill the holes, you're talking about run lanes from the safeties, from the linebackers, filling the gaps?
Definitely. I'm glad you said safeties. They're so important in this game. Playing mentally smart, knowing when it's play action, when they can come down and fill the hole hard, maybe stop it for a 2-3 yard gain instead of a big 5-6.
Yeah.
But yeah, that's definitely a huge factor.
What are the keys those guys are looking for, from guards pulling, tackles pulling, fullbacks coming downhill, all those things? Or what's one thing that Beaver fans can look at from that secondary position, what those guys are looking at?
A lot of times, just pre-snap, looking at the position, the offensive lineman, a lot of guys at that college level will give it away before the ball's even snapped. So I know playing defensive lineman, most of the time, I would know whether it was run or pass before the play even started.
I always loved going against a D lineman that didn't wear gloves, and you could see the whites on his knuckles when you knew he was rushing or he was pass dropping. So
you always know watching their eyes too.
Yeah.
Here's my what to watch for, and it's the scoreboard early on. I think Oregon State has to have success early. They have to get those big plays to Brandin and get on the scoreboard and get some confidence going. Last week against UCLA, Stanford and UCLA were just slugging it out. Nobody could score, and then Stanford just sort of went away in the second half. So I think Oregon State needs some early confidence in this game. Okay, as we go back to a tweet from Aaron Cook, who says, Aaron was with us last week, former Beaver. Let's talk about the potential impact of the big defensive tackles Delva and Howtow this week. Case in point, what you just talked about. How will we utilize them? Will we do something different?
I really don't see anything much different except getting a lot of fresh bodies and then making sure that they're at full capacity, full effort every play. They're going to be huge. Like I said, we have to stop that run. They need to get in that backfield.
We used to joke about it being a track meet with those D-line when you were playing that. You played 6 or 7 guys and they're running on and off the field. Do you see more of that substituting personnel?
I do. Stanford's always a huge physical game, and when you have to stop the run every single play, you get winded. It's hard to do that because those guys, especially with me, I was undersized. They're always bigger than me.
Dylan
so I had
Wynn's
to put
not
so
lining
much
up
effort.
is the one technique this week.
Yeah, you can expect a Howtow in there this week.
Yeah.
All right, well, if you go to csnnw.com, you will see the weekly predictions by the expert crew. Tim is one of them, and Tim in the minority of folks who picked Oregon State to win. You and Aaron Fentress, the only ones that picked Oregon. The other 5 guys went with Stanford. So what's your prediction tomorrow, Tim, for a score? You already picked the Beavers.
Katie, I don't think we're going to see the type of score that we've seen out of the Beavers in the last several games, but I think it's a 28-17 win for the Beavers.
11-point win.
I think it's a score and a half, yes.
I like a 35-31. I don't think their defense is as good as it's been in the past. They're not stopping teams like they used to, so I think we'll still have the success that we've had the last couple of games.
I don't know if their offense can put up 31, Slade.
You know what? They scare me, and if we don't jump on them early, if we don't get that early score, get our crowd in it, I think they can put some points in our defense. We're a bend but don't break. We'll come up with some key plays, and we'll put some stops in some good categories.
I agree.
All right, so there you have it. Slade says Beavers win by 4. Tim says they win by 11. We shall see tomorrow night.